following rebuttal is addressed to Bob Chipman, aka Movie Bob, or in this case, aka the Game Overthinker. Hey Bob, long-time listener, first-time video responder. I've followed a lot of your shows for a long time after being mildly curious about what kind of movie reviews a website like The Escapist of all things would be hosting. And through it all, I've not seen eye to eye with you on my share of topics. In fact, I'd be willing to say that I out-and-out disagree with easily a quarter of the things you say, though the percentage might skew closer to half with regards to gaming culture. This hasn't kept me from listening to your reviews and commentaries. Much of what you have to say is fairly educational for the non-comic book reading crowd, and even the aforementioned opinions on gaming culture have always been well represented, well reasoned, and well stated. Most of my disagreements have simply been differences of opinion, however ardently I may argue them in my head. Then came episode 61, Bells and Whistles. I must admit, at first I didn't think too much on it. I disagreed with some of the things you said there, but like I said, that isn't all that uncommon. However, something nagged me about this particular episode, and I couldn't put my finger on it. I thought and thought, but it didn't stand out to me at first. Frustrated and confused, I saw fit to indulge in my monthly shower and perhaps continue pondering this issue afterwards. Midway through peeling off the first layer of caked on dirt, I had my epiphany. I knew what was wrong with this episode, and what you had said that had just rubbed me the wrong way. Let me see if I can just pull it up here. Okay. Here we are. Nearly all the great works of art, be they paintings, sculptures, plays, books, films, songs, have at least one thing in common. They're finished. The problem with this argument is it's false. It's quite definitively wrong. Almost every medium you issued forth as an example is subject to change after its release to the public. Let's start with the literary works. Most literary works, be they play, book, poem, etc., actually undergo numerous revisions post-publication. Parts are edited, sometimes mildly, sometimes drastically. In some cases, it's simply to correct errors in publication. Others, it's to modify mild narrative differences on the whim of either the writer or the publisher. Some, however, add extra content to their works, be it a wistful prologue, a clarifying epilogue, a lost chapter, whatever. One strong example of this is the great mock-epic poem The Rape of the Lock by Alexander Pope. In case you don't recall having taken any courses that covered 18th century literature, here's a brief primer for you. Alexander Pope was an 18th century poet and satirist who wrote a large collection of memorable and influential works, from his translations of Homeric literature to his essay on criticism. And, of course, Rape of the Lock, a poem written in epic structure to detail a petty tiff that had erupted between two acquaintances that had caused an unusual amount of stress between their two respective families, all resulting from a man who took a lock of a woman's hair without permission. Pope dramatically exaggerated the events by introducing powerful godly figures and cartoonishly dramatic reactions to the situation that satired the whole scenario, with the hope that this satire would soothe tensions by bringing to light how unbelievably stupid this feud was. This is a particularly strong example for two reasons. One, the modification was not small. Pope had originally written a 2-canto, 334-line poem. Upon the second publication of the poem, it had expanded to 5 cantos and 794 lines. Then it had been modified a third time, featuring a speech on the necessity of good humor and condemning the notion that women are most celebrated for their looks rather than the quality of their character. 2, the revisions were not solely the desire of the poet. They were in response to the reaction the poem received from its subject, Arabella for more. These changes were to better suit her taste and appeal to her further. In other words, a patch, to fix what was wrong and appeal to the target audience. What's more, this wasn't some minor work from some B-list author. This is one of the single most recognizable works of satire ever written by one of the most revered satirists ever to apply ink to parchment. This is mockery by which much mockery is measured. This is required reading in the curriculum of almost every liberal arts major. This is by no means the only example out there, but if I dedicate any more of this speech to one topic, I will run out of time. So, on to plays. Plays are never particularly finished. While much of the writing may remain unchanged, most directors will radically modify elements from the play, from making it an all-girl cast to contemporizing the setting for which it was written. The writer and director are generally two different people, and then actors will bring their own interpretations to the characters. This is the stuff through which themes are changed, messages altered, entire points radically diverted. These are modifications made by third parties to change the experience for the viewers, or to put it in gaming parlance, mods. That the source material exists somewhere is unimportant, as video games share this quality as well. No matter how far from the current incarnation it may be, I can always easily track down a copy of Diablo 2 that hasn't received a single patch or a single modification to the original published code. This line of reasoning pretty much applies to movies too, provided they stay true to the source material, which obviously not all of them do. This is, in fact, the case for almost all the media used in support of your argument, save two: paintings and sculptures. Well, that is to say, all media focus purely on a still image. The iconic photograph of Sharbat Gula, the jaw-dropping majesty of Bierstadt's Yosemite Falls, the art and statement only of Andy Warhol. All of these are completed works that never receive any sort of modification. You are correct, there will always be only one Mona Lisa. This is because no one is capable of modifying any facet of the painting, even the artists themselves. The medium is limited to a single canvas, or that of a single lump of clay. Plays, movies, and music inhabit a far more modular and insubstantial medium, and thus can be altered. One piece of art, the script in this case, or lyric sheet, whatever, can be reimagined millions of ways while still being recognizable as the original work and thus the original piece of art. Let's, however, for the sake of argument, presuppose that that's a matter of interpretation. Let's concede to your statement that once art has left the hands of the progenitor of said art, then it is no longer malleable. All following changes made to the piece are not the original work, they are simply other pieces of art inspired by the original. I don't necessarily agree, but I can accept that as a rational argument. So let's talk about a medium I know you care about. Movies. To it, let's talk about the director's cut. Not just the director's cut, the extended cuts, the special editions. They didn't just happen to Star Wars, and while some cuts change minor elements, other cuts can dramatically alter the story, change the flow of events, and completely modify the narrative and shape something entirely different from the source material. Sure, sometimes it doesn't work to the movie's advantage, but sometimes it does. Many argue that the extended cuts of the Lord of the Rings trilogy represent the superior content. Many swear by the extended cut of Donnie Darko being the only cut worth seeing. Whether or not these are defensible positions is unimportant. The original creators themselves took their work, expanded or altered the finished product, and then released the alteration to their fans. The only difference between that and game patching is that games rarely charge for their patches, which isn't to say that that doesn't occasionally happen. Ultimately, the notion that most art is released in its final, never-to-be-altered state is mostly bunk. Art is never finished, only abandoned. And many artists are cautious to simply abandon their works. Not just in games, but in TV shows, movies, books, pamphlets, manifestos, plays, ballets, musical comedies, comics, anything and everything that is the progeny of that artist. But anyway, thank you and keep on keeping on. You've managed to produce enough content to keep even pedantic nerds like me entertained, and for that you should be congratulated. Postscript. The hero of the Choose Your Own Adventure book is me. That's the point. I'm the hero, choosing my own adventure.